Okay, good morning, everyone. We're at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and we'll get started so we can stay on time today. I want to thank you for taking your time to come down to our Assessment Directors meeting for November, and we expect that the Assessment and Accountability Office will provide you some information that will make your time with us worthwhile and helping you with the responsibilities you have back in your LEAs. I want to start out in Bucks Southern School District where I worked before. We always started our meetings with good news or good humor. And this setting is hard to do that, to rotate through the room, but I always think it's good to do that. This comic is one that once I got this new assignment, today's my official third week on the job. I appreciate the patience that the people here have had with me, but this took on new meaning to me when after the time I've had in assessment. So sometimes I think the people we assess wonder if this is what we're trying to do to them. I'm going to take just a minute to introduce myself. Some of you in the room I know and I'm familiar with, and others, this is the first time that I've seen you. Again, my name is Darren Nielsen. This is kind of a little history of where I've been. I actually started my career at Teton High School in Driggs, Idaho after graduating from Utah State University. It's a wonderful place, 912 high school, about 250 students, and I would have stayed there forever, except my wife didn't like the Teton Basin. It was very cold. I think that first year I was there, they closed school 7 days in a row because it was 30 below and the buses wouldn't start. And when I asked the people who lived there about that, they said, oh, this is really pretty typical or maybe a little more mild than we usually have. So in order to maintain a happy marriage, which I have for 25 years, we relocated and came back to Bucks Southern School District. I started there as a counselor. After 8 years of that, I was moved into a elementary principal position at Bunderson Elementary, a school that had been there for some time and has since been closed and is being used as a Boys and Girls Club location in that area now. Then I was brought into the district office where I worked with CTE and secondary curriculum. Our IT director left, and Steve Lang, who was our interim superintendent at the time, previous state superintendent, appointed me to be the director of technology. And I will confess that's the only job in my career I've run from. Every other job that I've changed has been going to something that I was interested in, but I was happy to get out of technology. Went into assessment, professional development, and then finished up my 21 years in Bucks Southern School District as their assistant superintendent over curriculum. Anyway, I'm happy to be at the state and excited for some of the challenges that we have down here. And I'm also happy to bring a LEA perspective, a fresh one. Hopefully that stays with me for a long time here. So the decisions that we make are run through the context of the LEA's eyes. So we're going to go through my part of the presentation. I'm just going to run through some things that we've been working on in the 3 weeks that I've been here. There have been some things that feel like they're very time sensitive to me, and I'm sure to you as well. So we'll go through these topics during the time that I'm here, and I'll have about probably 20 minutes, and then we'll turn it over to members of the Assessment and Accountability Department to provide more details. So let's start out with the Questar contract. You guys are all aware the Questar won the RFP for the 3 through 8 statewide assessment that is scheduled to be implemented next school year. We have not actually finalized that contract. We're going back and forth with them on our statement of work. We have a face-to-face meeting where they'll be in Utah on December 13th, and we've had some conference calls with them, and we're trying to finalize those things. They've given us a rough implementation timeline, and I'm going to share just a couple of those items because, again, it's in flux still. As soon as that's finalized, their timeline specifically, we'll share that with all the LEAs so that you're aware of it. Okay, so Hal asked the question about the DLM and whether this contract includes it. When the RFP for this was written, it did include an alternative assessment. Now, I feel like a politician already. I'm gonna hedge just a little on this because it's still in flux. So that contract, that original, if I understand things right, the original RFP was supposed to be for 3 through 10, and then there was some changes politically, and so it was scoped down to a 3 through 8. With that, we've included the alternative assessment, and Questar is right now planning on, and in our contract work so far, it includes them developing and us delivering an alternative assessment for 3 through 8 beginning next year. The caveat for that is as we've prepared the RFP for the 9-10 And as we've talked to student services here, they're concerned with the possibility of having multiple vendors for an alternative assessment. So having a Questar for 3 through 8, maybe Questar, maybe not Questar for 9, 10. They still have a need for 11, 12. ACT doesn't provide an alternative assessment, and by law we need to have alternative assessments there. So they have some concerns, and we're right now in discussion with the board about whether to pull that out and do a completely separate RFP for alternative assessment 3 through 12. That's really loose. Right now, though, in our contract, it includes alternative assessment, and we're moving forward with Questar unless the board directs us otherwise, which we hope to know that within the next 2 weeks. Does that help a little bit? Okay. So we'll publish the timeline as soon as we can. We have an ARR to Questar handoff meeting that we've scheduled in January. We'll bring both teams of people together to try to make sure that this goes as smoothly as possible. They've indicated in their early timeline that they'll have the summative and the training tests completed by July of 2018, and that the benchmark tests would be done prior to October 1. So again, that's a rough timeline. These are things I know that are important to you in the school, so as well. Okay, so the other things that we've had going on that have impacted you in the schools has to do with the writing component, right? So the writing for grades 9 through 10, that decision was made, and I can't speak to exactly when that was made, but it was made to pull that out during this school year. And that's created a little bit of problems, a few problems probably for you and your LEAs. So currently, as far as the blueprints go, currently 29% of the points or the weight would go to writing. They'll pull that out and remove it, and it'll be redistributed to the other parts of the reading component. For grades 3 through 8, where we've gone down to a single prompt, the plan right now is to adjust, again, the points to try to keep from having double weighting with the writing. We're interested, as we've worked with AIR, with these changes, that our primary goal is to make sure that we have maintained the reliability of our scores, that data from previous years can still be compared to data that we're going to get for our programs for this year. Yes. On the grades 9 through 10, removing writing. I don't know if there's somebody in my department that was involved in that before I came. Sydney, do you want to talk about that? The question that came in, I would probably say something incorrect. The question had to do, for those of you online, a little bit of the rationale between removing the writing for grades 9 through 10 for this year.
Thank you. So I know many of you and us as well have been in this kind of back and forth as we've gone back and forth with what we're doing with 9th and 10th grade. And a couple months ago when the board decided we were not able to go forward with ACT and do a sole source contract with ACT Aspire, and determined we needed to continue with SAGE for 9 and 10 for the remainder of this year. The next decision was, it was discussed at a board meeting that the LEAs were not planning on doing writing if we were doing ACT Aspire. They weren't planning on writing. We had already gone back and forth with ACT and then going back to SAGE. And so they felt like it was trying to keep things easier for you and the LEAs to make sure that we were trying to support you and not going back and forth with so many things. And so since the board determined that because we were not going to be doing ACT Aspire and said we were going with SAGE, they thought it would be more beneficial to not do writing with SAGE in 9th and 10th grade. So they decided to remove writing because the assumption was they had already made plans, the LEAs had already made plans for ACT, for instruction that goes along with that, and felt like they weren't prepared to continue with writing because that wasn't in the plan. For writing. Right. So the concern of we removed writing from 9th and 10th grade, but we added writing to 11th grade and ACT. And there's a concern with if we're not doing writing in 10th grade, or I shouldn't say that, if we're not assessing writing in 10th grade, will the students be prepared for the 11th grade ACT writing component? And that's a valid point. So I think that's something that we're looking towards, remembering that next year, so in the 18-19 school year, we're only assessing writing in 5th grade and 8th grade, and then ACT 11th. Yeah. Yeah. Right. We'll have different assessments. So the question is, what about the trimester schools who are involved in the summative window right now or before February? So as we've talked with the board and trying to move forward with the plans of the board and their decision in supporting that, we've talked with AIR and are trying to make sure, okay, we can support that on the system through AIR, but they can't make those changes until March. So anyone who's in the summative window now and is taking the summative assessment in 9th and 10th grade, up until, you have until March 8th to finish writing, that you have to complete both sections, writing and reading. Right. Right. So I guess the question is, if you are administering SAGE summative right now in 9th and 10th grade, they would have to do both writing and reading to be able to get that score. That has to be done before the window closes on March 20th. The writing has to be done by March 8th. Otherwise, they will not get a composite score if they haven't completed both sections. Starting on March 20th, when we roll over into the new summative, the spring summative window, there will no longer be writing in 9th and 10th grade available as an assessment. So I know we've talked through concerns with some of the schools that are assessing in different ways, and they have classes, their courses are split, and so I think it's us we at the USBE will have to be talking with those LEAs that are doing something like that to see how we can work that, how we can make it work in supporting the board's decision. Yeah. Right. So the question is, how do we have reliability if we remove writing, where that was 29% of the blueprints, as well as a difficult portion of the assessment? It's something we talked about with our technical advisory committee the last 2 weeks ago to really look at how does that look. They showed us some research, or talked through some research where there was a really, really high correlation, like 97% correlation between reading and writing of students. They felt that reliability would still be there, that the data would still be reliable between students who took reading and writing and students who just took reading. Yeah, Rob.
Question is it settled whether the new assessment will be based on the Utah item bank or will it be? Yes.
So for the 3 through 8 RFP, we are transferring over our Utah item bank, and then we're continuing with more development. But we are transferring all of our items that we have in our banks. So as far as the 3 through 8 assessment, the platform will be different, but the items will be the same. We'll be developing more, but the main bulk of the items will be the same. So that should not be an issue, minus the fact that we're also removing writing from 3 through 8, besides 5th and 8th grade next year, and looking how does that look. One of the things we discussed was right now it's difficult because writing is built in, with taking writing out of 9th and 10th grade, writing is built into the blueprint for 9th and 10th grade and as part of the overall ELA score. We're in talks about whether in 5th and 8th grade we have writing as a separate score and not part of the overall ELA score, to have a comparable between all those grades and then also include that 5th and 8th grade writing score, or do we keep that in? So we're in talks right now and trying to determine how to best keep that vertical scaling and to show that we can have some trend data over time.
Right. Thank you, Sydney. Again, I can't tell you how appreciative I am of the staff of the Assessment and Accountability Office. So as we move into, we're in operational field test cycle for our new science standards, 6 through 8. As we do that, we still have some work to do. One of those things is the proficiency level descriptors. Right now that's scheduled to be done in September with the same time as the standard setting. And as we have in years past, we'll be soliciting educators across the state to help with that process. And we'll start recruiting people in the early spring for that. So opt-out. I want to talk just a little bit, a couple of slides here on opt-out. It's a concern in LEAs, I would guess. It's a concern in the State Board of Education. One of the first meetings that I had when I came here was regarding opt-outs and what can be done to address that issue. So some of the things that we have to struggle with here, how are ESSA decisions made on identifying low-performing schools when your opt-out rate gets so high? And I'm going to show you some data from this past year in relation to that. Opt-out rates have increased from 3.1% in 2015, so this is statewide opt-out rates. In each of your LEAs, it's different, but I would guess you've had some increase in most LEAs to 5.9% in 2017. Which puts us, as a state, it puts us outside of the 95%, right, statewide. We're not the only state that's seen increases in opt-outs. That's true. Across the country, there are only, Tiffany indicated there's only 5 states that allow opt-out provisions in the state, which I didn't know that. I had such a myopic perspective. I figured every state allowed opt-outs, but we're one of only 5 that by law allow that. Approximately 1/3 of our school districts, 13 out of 41, have opt-out rates above 5%. So again, many of you sitting here are in that situation. This is where we get into some issues that get troubling for us in regards to ESSA. Three of the 5 schools identified for school turnaround this year had opt-out rates above 20%. You'll see those numbers there. So it brings into question of whether we're identifying the right schools for turnaround status. When you get the opt-out rates high enough, it's hard to know whether we're actually allocating the funds that are designed to help turn around schools and low-performing schools correctly and appropriately. One of the things we've started in our office is we're taking prior year's data and doing some modeling with different states have tried different things in regards to this. Colorado has kind of a crosswalk they've identified or have started to use. So we're going back to prior years and trying a few models to try to see if we can get any reliability, even with opt-out rates, on identifying our low-performing schools. So here again, this is something that was a little bit of a, should have made sense. It's something I should have understood already, but obviously there are certain groups of students in our schools who are less likely to opt out, right? And you'll see those on this chart. And that's troubling from an equity standpoint as well. One of the things that goes along with this is, I don't know, it was about a week ago, one of the LEAs in the state requested a Spanish translation of the opt-out form. And I was caught off guard that we didn't have one. Because opt-outs have been 4 years now. We've been doing opt-outs. And the number of, in fact, I expected we had multiple languages. That form translated into multiple languages. And so I was surprised when that wasn't the case. It also illustrates this issue right here, that there are certain disadvantaged groups or underadvantaged groups who are less likely to be participating in that opt-out, which then really skews your data even more, right? Let's talk a little bit, well, let's go back. Were there any questions on opt-out or discussion? Yes.
This is if I come into this. Part of what I do. It's something that I'm struggling to figure out how to help the school.
Been identified as that. Yeah, so the discussion for those of you online is from Park City talking about that's one of the primary issues they're dealing with is they're number one in the state in opt-out rates. And the students who do participate aren't necessarily doing their best. So let me talk about something that we've been working with. Me personally have been struggling with when I was LEA level and then also here at the state the short time I've been here, and that is this part of our code that doesn't allow us to use the student score on a statewide assessment in their grade. So the statewide assessment then, in terms of the student's perspective, has no value. And I would guess that most of us in this room, when we were high school students, well, even today in my work, when I look at the list of things I have to do, I prioritize, and things that don't seem to have a high need or benefit to me, those get pushed to the bottom, right? I mean, that's human nature. I believe that the state board in December, Dave Thomas here in the office, as I talked to him earlier this week, I believe they're going to be looking at language to try to soften that in some regard. What he talked about was opt-out of opt-out. In Box Elder School District, what we did before I left there was put out a letter to our teachers talking about allowing students to choose to use their grade, use it in a grading format somehow. But I think that's one of the barriers. I personally see that opt-out populations are made up of a couple different primary groups. Obviously, there's a wide range of reasons people opt out, but you have the politically motivated group who either believe that this assessment is an intrusion into their rights, the government's involved in it, it's a breach of their privacy in some way, and so they feel pretty strongly and passionately about this right to opt out. And then you have the group, and I think we see it in all areas of our schools, parental rights, right? Where not just in assessment. When I was in Box Elder, we saw in every area that you're here to serve me, and if we want to follow that rule, we're going to, and if not, we're not going to. And so, for that group of students, we really need to show that there's value for the assessment, right? That's the key to get them to come back, is there's some meaning to them personally. And those are some things that I think we can work on. From a legislative standpoint, really the legislature's in a position they have to, there's really just two sides. There's either you allow opt-outs in your parental rights state and you ignore accountability, or you're an accountability state and you hold the line on that part of parental rights on opting out of assessments. And so I don't really know where they stand as a group. But yeah, I agree. It's a challenge in Park City. It's a challenge in many of your LEAs. And here at the state, it's not. Like I said, it's the first meeting I had to do with opt-out. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So let me try to summarize the best I can, and you correct me if I've. The main thing from Canyon School District, right, was as we talked, was making sure that the board has getting the ability for assessment scores to be used in determining a student's proficiency or grade as one of their highest priorities, and getting that back in. There's also just some discussion about the opt-out, a formal opt-out and the informal opt-out, and a request to have the amount of minutes that a student participated in the testing session available to LEAs, because they could use that in some way. Yeah, there's certainly some challenges there. I will just, again, I want to confirm that I believe it is a high priority for the board. Based on just my 3 weeks here and the number of discussions I've had around that. I've also been included in an email loop that involved a legislator asking for some ideas. Whether he's planning on running a bill or not, I don't know. He's a member of the minority group, so I'm not sure he has the power to pass it. But there's a lot of discussion about that, trying to help improve circumstances around opt-out. Yeah, I agree. I agree with you. I actually have some hope that this next several months there might be some headway made on our ability to allow a student to use their assessments in some meaningful way for them. So, Kim? Oh, okay. Yeah, I apologize to those who are online. We've had, again, a lot of questions and discussion about the challenges of opt-out. We have one of our charter schools who reported they have about 95% of their students. They're an online charter school. About 95% of their students who are opting out of the SAGE test, and concerns about the impact that would have on the perception of the school because of the way school grading is currently set up. Okay. All right. So I'm going to move on to our RFP that we are getting ready to release. And this is it's based on Utah code. There's 2 requirements in the code. And this was important for me to get my mind around as I came down and jumped into this process towards the end of it. Is what are the primary objectives of this RFP? So it has to be predictive of students' college readiness, and it has to provide a growth score. Now those are wide open discussion points, right? They're not tightly defined what a growth score is and how to define that, or even predicting a college student's readiness. Request for proposal. So before we can spend large amounts of money, we have to go to bid. And so that's being prepared right now. We're actually a little behind schedule on it. It's one of the things when I first got here is this is a high priority because we're behind schedule, and in order to get it ready to roll out next year, we've got to move forward. So we're currently underway at the November board meeting. Those of you who might have watched that online, they gave us permission to continue to work on that, and we'll bring in 2 board members next week to review our final draft, and they'll to make sure we have board support on the language in the RFP, and then we will release that on December 1st. We will go through the standard process of soliciting members of the community stakeholders, some of you in this room, some superintendents, school board members, parents, a few teachers, to come in and be on the scoring committee, which will occur probably somewhere towards the end of January, middle of January. So watch for those things, and we'll keep you updated as we move forward. But that's just a little bit of information on that. Again, in terms of the alternative assessment, right now the alternative assessment is included in that language. And within the next couple of weeks, we will know whether the board would like us to move that out and go to a separate RFP for alternative assessment 3 through 12. So.
Going back on the college readiness. So what assessments are currently available other than that demonstrate college readiness?
Yeah, so this is some of the gray area and where we're trying to make sure we're consistent with what the board intends. Utah, and I'm going to be speaking loosely here because it's been a while since some of these conversations, but Utah's statewide assessment system received a high honesty score on some national reports, meaning that the proficiency levels that our students are getting on their statewide assessment are highly correlated with national assessments. And that's not too far off on ACT. The number of kids who receive proficiency score statewide on ELA, for instance, is not too far off from what the ACT shows that are college ready. So you could make the case that there are assessments like the ones we've developed that are also predictive of college readiness. And obviously the ones off the shelf, ACT, SAT, and there's probably others that also claim to make that case on their behalf. It's a tricky part of the RFP. It's because there's some things you can write in there that would exclude one vendor or another, and so I think that's part of the reason we're a little behind is making sure we're consistent with the intent of of the legislation. We're consistent with what the board hopes to, and then we send out an RFP that doesn't eliminate vendors from bidding on it. Okay, so when we had our TAC meeting, the Center for Assessment, who's our consultants, they talked about that many of the LEAs in Utah currently have your own assessments. I think Granite does a lot of benchmark assessments, a lot of district-wide assessments. So Park City's nodding, but you might as well, maybe many others. And so they're interested in supporting LEAs. If you have your own assessments and you want to try to determine ways to measure growth using those, they're interested in providing support, and that could look like anything from just documentation that you could read and reference to consultancy to some on-site coaching. So I'm going to send a survey out in the coming days to assessment directors, and you can just respond to that. And that's what that survey is about, is finding out what kind of interest there is across the state for getting support from the Center for Assessment, which is our consultant, to come in and help support LEAs in your efforts to measure growth off your own assessments. Okay. And then this one goes back to Cash's question. And I put this up here again because it's a big deal. And I understand it's very disruptive. It required an amendment to our contract with AIR. It was, so it's significant on every level. But it's really important to understand that AIR can adjust the engine prior to March 20th. So if they could do that, we wouldn't have the problem that we have in Cash, because you would, your students wouldn't be taking writing. You wouldn't have had them take writing. It wouldn't be available. But because of the notice, the timing of the notice we gave AIR that we needed to pull writing out, it delayed their ability to adjust things on their end. And so we have this year where we've got this split system. Testing window 1 includes writing. Those of you who are testing in window 1, we strongly encourage you to administer writing and reading, if at all possible, so that you can get your data that will be calculated in your school accountability. If you don't, and you administer one of those tests in the fall window and one in the spring window, AR has said there will not have a way to put those scores together. So it impacts, at the student level, it will impact their individual score report, but at the LEA level, it will impact your accountability. So we'll probably talk about this regularly, probably talk about it in front of superintendents, but this is a significant thing that you need to attend to in your LEAs, and I recognize it's disruptive to many of you. Some of you, you're probably, oh, well, no writing, and it doesn't impact your administration of testing, and maybe even your teachers. Some of them are probably have some anxiety about this because of the way they've mapped out their instructional year, right? So any questions on this issue? Yes. Yeah, so this is my error. The March 20th is when the spring window starts. There's a blackout period, if I understood what was said earlier this morning with Sydney. So the opportunity to actually administer the writing test is the 9th, is that correct, or 8th? 8th or 9th? The 9th. So after March 9th, that window for the fall test administration closes. There's a blackout period before the spring one opens on March 20th. And that's where we hand off from writing to no writing. Yes. Yes. So to restate that for those in the field, if you're going to administer during the fall window either of those tests, you'll need to complete both of those before March 9th in order to get the composite score and the scaled score for the student. And there's another question. Must be hearing things. I apologize. I don't have any better answer for you. Okay, I'm going to turn the time over to, is it Sydney? Who's up next? Again, I want to thank you for, again, your time today with us. And our goal will always be to make sure that the time you spend with us is you're able to get information that helps you perform your functions in your LEA. Yes. The third one's the ones, okay, so the question online was, I mentioned three groups that I see, the political, parental rights, and the third one. The third one, I think I blended parental rights into it, and that's just so if it doesn't have value to me, I'm not taking it. Right? And I probably have experiences in my life where I've done the same thing. So, yes. So the question is there any discussion about with this new RFP for 910 to include 11? And I believe, and I'm going to look on the back row, that the answer is no to that because we're driven by the legislative, the guidelines or requirements and the funding tied to it. And right now it just is it's designed for 910.
And one of the things we've discussed with our 9 to 10 RFP going out is if we end up going with a vendor like ACT Aspire that would not use our item banks, how do we make our items available for all of you? So that would be the same with our 11th grade items that we've developed. We have a bank of items. So if you have a system that you might be able to platform that those items would be useful, if we're not using those items in our summative assessments or our interims or benchmarks, with our new vendor for 9th and 10th grade, that's been our discussion is how do we make that available. And there's considerations in that, especially with our ELA items where our vendor, if the passages were not specifically written for Utah, the vendor has to access copyright permissions. So then that's been the discussion if we end up sharing with you our banks for 9th and 10th grade, who will be responsible for maintaining those copyright permissions for the passages. But we're considering all those elements as we're moving forward with the RFP, and we've spent a lot of money developing items, and we have lots of data on the items, so how do we make them useful to all of you? So the other issue with writing that we've been looking into, and many of you have had questions about, is 3rd and 4th grade. And with our new scoring engine, so we've been talking about this since last spring when we started these scoring engines and then said, no, wait, we're not ready for this. We can't start something at the end of the year when people haven't been teaching, utilizing these different condition codes. So we wanted to remind everyone, we've had, I don't know, several hundred teachers, just under 600 teachers. We've gone across the state participating in writing workshops and meeting with teachers and explaining this to teachers. We wanted to make sure you're aware of it again, and so you can explain it to teachers. And we really, really want to push, and Kim's going to talk about this, the benchmarks. If teachers are administering the benchmarks, they'll see students picking up these condition codes. So the two condition codes are prompt copy match and duplicate text. Prompt copy match happens when the students copy. More than 70% of the student writing comes directly from the prompts. And so if the student has more than 70% of their actual writing copied directly from the passages that they're reading from, they will receive this flag of prompt copy match. That will be on the benchmarks or interims or summatives. So the nice thing about using the benchmarks is the teachers will be able to see that's the flag that the student got. They'll also be able to see the actual student writing as well as the passages. So you can start to compare, oh yeah, this student has first, next, last, and that's the only thing that they actually wrote of their own writing. The rest comes directly from evidence from the text. So it's nice to be able to show students and teachers, hey, this is what's happening. This is why the student got this flag or why they got that lowest score. On the summative assessment, if the student receives either of these condition codes, they will be sent for hand scoring. So what we found in 3rd and 4th grade was we took a look at the summative assessments from last year, and we took a look at actual student work and divided it up and said, okay, we highlighted exactly the places that were copied directly from the passages and then looked at what was not highlighted to see what is the student's actual original writing and said, okay, yes, this deserves a score. It may not be a high score, but it doesn't deserve automatically the lowest score. What we wanted to make sure was that the computer's not scoring. If we set it in 3rd grade up to like 80% instead of 70%, the computer is scoring the author's writing. 80% of what the student wrote was coming from the author. So it's at 70%, but it will go to hand scoring if it hits that condition code, and then the reader, the human reader, will be able to assign that student a score. Now, it may still come back with this code, with prompt copy match. If the human reader says, oh, this is practically completely copied, the student may still receive one of these codes, but it will be from a human reader, not from the computer. Are there questions on either of these? The document, the picture up here, will be sent with the email that Emily will send out with the PowerPoint today, describing each of these two condition codes, as well as some recommendations for how to help prepare students for writing and suggestions for what teachers can do. Now, we also have a follow-up to our writing workshops. We run across the state and provided those writing workshops where one of the assignments was to ask the teachers to utilize a prompt in Utah Compose, as well as utilize one of the benchmark writing assessments. And then we'll be following up with those workshops. They'll come back for a second day in January, February, and review those and make sure students are prepared and teachers are teaching writing. And our hope is that we've made a lot of gains in writing across the last couple of years across the state, and writing has really improved. We've heard from university people that have said we have fewer and fewer students in our remedial writing courses. They're coming to college and universities prepared to write, which we're excited about. We don't want to lose that momentum, even if we're not assessing writing. So our hope is to continue with writing, even though it may only be assessed in 5th and 8th grade and then in 11th grade. Any questions about writing, the thresholds? Okay. Then I think testing ethics. Jared.
All right, we have a testing ethics policy finally updated and approved. Here I've just mentioned it's late into the year, right? Most people have already started testing, and if you've started testing, you were supposed to train your people to test ethically. And so we have it posted. And you can see the link there, and once you get the PowerPoint, you'll have the link to be able to click on. It's 4 pages. It's quite a bit shorter than it was in the past. Probably the biggest, I guess, addition to this policy is the spelling out of the opt-out, which we had that discussion. But as you know, the rewarding or the penalizing, that is in this document with some examples. And so you don't have to retrain anyone. It's there for you to use. It would be helpful, I'm sure, to have your teachers review it. It's short enough that they could look at it. They could have it available to be able to refer to. We get quite a few questions about the testing ethics as they're concerned about what they should or shouldn't do. I think the biggest thing that we put in here, or one thing that I think is important when these questions come up, and you know this, but if it's going to, and I guess it relates a little bit to this opt-out as well, but if it's going to not give you the accurate data of what a student can or cannot do, don't do it. And keep that in mind. Anyway, that's the policy. Any questions on that? Okay. I just wanted to share this. I know we have questions, so I just wanted to get it up there. Oh. Yeah. So to restate, is there do people, as they go through the training for the ethics, do they have to sign something saying they've gone through the training, and are these resources available? on the website? And the answer is yes to both of those. We don't collect the signatures. It's for you to make sure that if there is an issue, you have that saying, yes, they were trained. We did our part in making sure testing ethics was shared. Any other questions? Okay, I wanted to share this as well just to just get it out there in writing as far as the SAGE assessments and how they're required or not required at the secondary level. We've talked plenty about opt-out and parental exclusion. I just wanted to, again, we've had questions. I just wanted to post this that on our website, on the landing page, it comes right up if you scroll down just a little bit. There's a parental exclusion form. There's some FAQs on if you have questions about what you should or should not do, other things about the parental exclusion. And as Darren mentioned, we would love to hear if you already have this document, this parental exclusion form translated, whether you have that or not. We don't know, and it was kind of a surprise, as he mentioned. One that we haven't had it. The other is just not knowing how it's used out in the field. Yes, the only, sorry, got to restate. So the question is whether ELA 11 in the spring summative, if that will include writing, and the answer is yes. The only one that's changing, the only ones that are changing, grade 9 and grade 10. So all others will have writing. The one previous? Yeah, 11th is going to look different, and 12th will most likely look different as well. Yeah, and SAGE won't be there, but yeah, so you're going to have the 9, 10, and then you're going to have ACT, and then you're going to have, yeah, just that way. So the question or comment is that the timing on the RFP is for 18-19. So this year, this is how it looks. Next year, the discussion was that it's going to look different. Right, right. Yeah, ACT will still be the 11th grade. SAGE assessments won't be there. Any other questions? And then this is from Ann Michelle, our accountability specialist. She has it here. So we've made some changes, hopefully to be easier for you to try and, rather than try and figure out, did they come before April 15th or after April 15th? So this is talking about testing EL students that come into your district or school. All the check marks mean test the student, and then in the right column is just, we're going to take care of that on our end, on the back end. And so it's just showing you where that student's score is going to be used or not used. Any questions on this? Sure. From what I understand, you're enrolling them and you have the dates there, but when they come in, you're going to test them. Other than if April 15th of this next year, they come April 27th and you happen to be in the testing window and it's and you're going, you know, you have, oh, we're going to test April 28th, and they just came yesterday. As far as special codes, I will need to get back to you on that. There are things that you're doing, hopefully, in your system, but yeah.
Not ethical to have students that have very limited English skills in English.
Great question. Yeah, I'm just presenting her slide. I have also received questions about that as far as frustration and concerns about that. So we will need to talk more about that. The idea, I think, here is to simplify for you so that let's just have them test, and then we'll worry about where it falls on the other side. But I do understand what you're talking about as far as welcome to the school, and then all of this frustration, right? Especially ELA. Oh, okay. Has she said anything? Okay, and Michelle, there has been talk here about is it ethical to be able or to be testing students right when they come in their first year of enrollment with difficulty in the language and just throwing them into that. Maybe we'll give Anne Michelle some time to respond and we can share that when she has that response. Were there any other questions? Okay, I'll send it over to Kim, and then as we hear from Anne Michelle, we'll make sure to share that.
Okay, thank you. A lot of the stuff I'm talking about today is really repeats, but it's also a reminder because we are at the deadline now for the secure browser. Remember, the new secure browser for Sage has to be installed on your computers by November 27th, which is like 2 weeks. So, or actually it's like a week. I don't know, 27th is what, 2 Mondays away. So please make sure you do that. This slide indicates exactly where you go to do that. And so please make sure that if you haven't done so, and I think most people probably already have, but if you haven't, you are at the window and it's time to do it. Yes. Jared. Absolutely. I'll just let you talk into the mic.
I think we've softened that a bit in that it needs to be installed by the time you start testing. So if you've started testing, you should make sure your secure browser version is updated. If you haven't tested at all and it's coming in the spring, then you need to get that done, but you need to get it done before you start testing.
That's fine. That's fine. If the comment was that some of the new schools are renting computers and won't be able to do that until March. The main reason you want the secure browsers updated is if you're using this benchmarks or if you're giving interim, that needs to be updated so that you get the optimal work out of it. Yes. Okay, Anne Michelle respond. I'm going to just let you. Do you want me to read what she said? So Anne Michelle said, in order to be counted for participation, the student needs to complete at least 6 questions or 1 non-blank character in an essay, because there was a question from the field that asked what happens if an EL student is getting teary-eyed, do you have to count it for participation? And that's why the rules are there. So in order to be counted for participation, the student needs to complete at least 6 questions or 1 non-blank character in an essay. So that's how it works. Okay, here's just the information. Because we send this PowerPoint out, we just wanted to make sure you're aware of what your browsers were and how you had to do it. And then voice pack recommendations, as we talked about in our last meeting. Remember, there are recommended voice packs for your computers, and they really are specific to certain things. And so it's important that you select the right one. If you've never heard what they sound like, we strongly encourage you actually listen to some of these. In the past, we've had a few LEAs just not care, and we've heard from students when we did some of our observations that they care a lot. They really don't like Miss Anna. Another thing, this went out yesterday on the portal. We just want to let you know, for those of you using Chromebooks, that 61 and 62 is available, but there is a known issue right now with the TTS tracking. And so we're recommending you wait to update your Chromebooks until we notify you the issue's been resolved. They are working with Google, AIR is working with Google to fix whatever it is that's the tracking problem. So if you haven't updated, you may want to not update, but many of you have auto update on your computers. So you just need to be aware that when you're testing, you may hear kids say the text to speech sounds funny, or it's not tracking well, and that's really what the issue is. It just depends. You'd hear it probably for benchmark and interim, except for our trimester schools if you're testing. So that would be the biggest thing. Okay, so to build on what Sydney was talking about with the writing, one of the big questions that we've had is, how do they find their results? Yesterday we looked, and I think we've given about 3,000 SAGE writing benchmarks have been given at like third grade. We just looked at third grade yesterday. But one of the questions we've had is, how do I find my results? I'm not even sure how to do this. And so we wanted to make sure, a good question. So we wanted to give you a couple quick instructional slides that you can clip out of the PowerPoint and send out to the teachers to make sure that they're aware. Some of you have done a fabulous job with this. Some people just didn't even know, and so I just wanted to let everybody know that the results when you give the benchmark tests are not found in the online reporting system. They're found in Airways. So it's a different system. So when teachers log in, you'll notice that it goes from the live test, which the live test administration is where they give the benchmark test. So they give the SAGE benchmarks the same exact way that they give the interim test and the summative test, okay? There's the exact same way. You go to the exact same place. They just need to make sure they pick the right test. So that would be a big thing. And then you might want to assist them in reviewing results. And this just comes from our demo account, by the way. But you'll see on the first column where it says assessment name, it'll list all the different assessments that students have taken, and teachers will only see the ones that they've given. But you can see all of them at your level, and then it will show you the test reasons. You can now go in and put in a test reason and sort. So if teachers are doing this specifically for a pretest, they can actually identify it as a pretest, and then when they give it as a post-test, they can actually identify it as a post-test. It shows how many students have given the test, what the average score is, and then it will show them when it was last taken. The condition codes show up for writing in the rubric, and I'll show you that in just a minute. Yes? Okay. Oh, this far? Okay. All right. The next thing is, this is where, as we told you, we really recommended, highly recommended, that all ELA teachers give a SAGE writing benchmark. As part of our writing workshop, we've asked them to give the informational writing benchmark because that's where we've seen the biggest impact on prompt copy match, because those responses tend to be shorter. It's also an area where teachers feel a little less instructionally savvy, is a great way. Writing for information is a tougher thing to teach than teaching argument and opinion, because it doesn't fall itself naturally into some of the formulaic writing that we've been instructing. So we've done a lot of work with prompt analysis and how you use text structure and what length, when you're writing one paragraph versus 3 paragraphs or 7. And so that's part of this. And when they actually give the informational benchmark test, they will, and hit score, this is when they find prompt copy match. And where that shows up is once a teacher's in their course and they've drilled down to the test, if you notice, this is just there's a student name, and it'll show what the total item is, and that where the 0 is where they click to find where they can actually see the response in just a minute. Yes? Benchmark. because the main reason being for what our purpose is for prompt copy match is because it's designed to be given in one test session. A teacher can go in, have the students write, submit, and get their score in one class period, and that we really highly recommend that. We have one thing that people need to be aware of. The benchmarks are the only tests that they go in multiple times after 10 days, and it's 10 consecutive days, it's not 10 school days, the test will expire. And then they have to you have to go in, we have to actually contact AIR to have those reset. This is really designed to be used as an instructional tool, as a pre or post test, at least for the writing, for sure. And that way they can go in and see so that they are aware of which students do it. I looked at some results last week, and I was really surprised. Like, I was looking at some 8th grade results, and there are some teachers that they have 5 and 6 kids in an 8th grade class hitting prompt copy match. That's going to really impact a teacher's writing scores, their ELA scores, a lot when that's happening. And 8th grade is still going to count. Yes, Heather? Right. Right, and with interim, yeah, and that was the other reason too. With interim, yes, did you? And Lori, I just noticed you said should they give them in one sitting? Yes. They really should give them in one sitting. You know, and that, of course, is dependent on scheduling. If you only have a half an hour, obviously you're not going to have time to do a good informational essay in 30 minutes. But if you're thinking 60 minutes, which is our recommended time for writing on the essay, it's a great way for students also to understand in a non-stressful, you know, formative way that sometimes you just have to be done. And it's also an easy way for them to monitor, because then they can go in and see the response. And after they hit that score, this is what the teachers actually see. Now, this one is off of our copy. This is one that hit duplicate text, so I could show you what it looks like. In this box right here is the student response. So you can see that this particular one, this is just a sample. A student just typed green sky, green sky, green sky over and over. And then underneath, you'll see the writing rubric. Okay, and it shows this rubric is identical to the one that's on interim and summative. It tells you how many points the student earned, how many points they could have earned, and then if there's a condition code, it is absolutely specific as to what it actually is. We have some that we looked at one today, Sydney and I were in the back, where a student, this is a live student who actually didn't type enough data. It came up, they got a low score, so we looked at it, and the reason was the student typed 3 words. Or what was it? There were a lot of germs or something like that. There's certain responses, but that's what this looks like, and a lot of teachers have never looked at that, and they're not used to the fact that they can actually go in and use it. Now, with that being said, the benchmarks are a secure open system, which is a complete oxymoron we recognize. I get asked this all the time, can we put the prompts in Utah Compose? No. Can we, use the prompts in other ways and share them out with our, no. Okay, it's designed to be basically a kind of a pretest for the summative test. I mean, that's more my thing with it. But instructionally, if you can sit down and look at the data and actually review this with your PLC or your grade level team and say, these are our students that are really struggling. We're seeing this. We need to sit down and think about instruction. And it's the only place that you can do this where it's using the exact same scoring engine. And that's why with our writing workshops, we've asked teachers, give an informational benchmark, see where your kids are, and then use Utah Compose as the tool that you use to give instant feedback and have them work. I get asked all the time, do the rubric score? There are different scoring engines. The rubrics are similar, and Utah Compose will give the message to students who do nonsense stuff, where they just type the same words over and over and over, that they have too many non-words or too much repetition in their essays. And it will, if students copy 2 giant chunks of text from like their passages and put them in, it will also tell them there's too much repetition. That's what that message is, that they're also copying too much. So it's a great, together they make a really fabulous writing tool that is an essential part of instruction that we really need everybody using. Utah Compose workshops, as we've been going out, we've asked for a lot of feedback. And I haven't done a lot of beginning Utah Compose workshops for about 1.5 years because so many teachers were using it, but we've had a massive turnover of teachers. And so I've had some requests to do some basic Utah Compose workshops. And this is when they are, November 28th in the public safety building, which, by the way, is that jazzy building over there. It's by the police office. It's actually where the police are. We have a really great we're going to be doing workshops. The nice thing about this is you can send teachers, they're half days, it's like 3 hours, so a teacher could share a sub if they needed to from a school. And then there's one on November 30th in Harrisville at Greenwood Charter School. That's just in the morning. And then Carbon School District has also offered to do one from 8 to 11:30 in Price. I have a couple that are just some individual schools that are doing that in addition to that. And if they don't, I haven't discussed it too much with them, but we might be able to do that. This is the information. This is how they register. It's on the slide. They just click on the SurveyMonkey because we're still waiting for Midas. So, yes. Okay. There are only 2 prompts. They will get the same prompt. They can take a benchmark up to 99 times. So they can take it more than once. So some teachers have asked, should we give like version A and then version B? We've left that up to the teachers. If you want to give them the exact same prompt and do exactly line by line, you can, or you can do the same. But with the benchmarks, there aren't a ton of prompts, and that's why it doesn't lend itself to being used over and over and over. Okay? Okay, SAGE system training. Yes, it's that time again for all of our rookie assessment directors. We are having, and I'm calling you rookies. You don't have to be news. You're just rookies. We have scheduled our training. You want to block this day out on your calendar, which is January 11th. We're still looking for a location. We haven't heard back yet, but it will be from 8:30 to 3. It basically is to prepare you for the upcoming SAGE assessments and to introduce all the features of the online system. It's a little more in-depth, specifically geared for SAGE rather than all of our systems like we do with our new AD training. We will be giving you there won't be a ton of updates, but any of the information for all of our veteran assessment directors, we will be giving you that information in the assessment directors meeting, which is the following week. So we won't be doing a separate webinar unless at this point in time, because we don't foresee a lot of differences, but that's kind of where we're at. We're just going to do it through the AD meeting. But if you're new or you have new people or you just feel like you want to come and hang with us because we're awesome and we're funny, and we will make it interesting. You will get a chance to kind of work through some of the weird questions that you get asked sometimes. We're going to give you some time to actually play in the system while you have some people to hold your hand. So that's what we're going to be doing. And then our writing workshop updates. These are the second sessions. It's important to know that the only way you can come to the second session is if you came to the first one, but we wanted you to be aware of when they were. Uinta School District has generously asked if we could come on the 24th of January, which was our second session for that Uinta when we went to Vernal. We will be doing a first session for writing workshops on the 24th. Jaime just emailed me today, so I haven't had a chance to put in the slide. We will send it out to let you know. But if there's anybody who did not get to come, and we had teachers, by the way, who came to Uinta from Tooele, drove from Vernal to Vernal from Tooele to come to the first writing workshop that we did. We're going to hold one more first session writing workshop. It will be on January 24th in Vernal. And then the second session for that will be February 28th. So if you have anybody who's interested in coming, they will have to go to Vernal, but that's when it will be. And we are still paying for subs, and subs are being covered for this. As far as registration for the second session, we had everybody go in and register, and Emily, who's been monitoring all of our training, as you all have those people in your districts as well, will be automatically registering anybody who came to one session goes to the next session, and then we've worked some situations out. But these are when they are. I put them in date order so they're easy for you to see. Megan and I drove 1,150 miles in 1 week, just so you know. So we'll be doing that again, and now it's going to be snowing, so we can't wait. It's going to be fun. So we've had fantastic feedback on that, by the way. In the second session, in case you're wondering what we're going to be doing, we've asked teachers to bring back the results from their SAGE benchmark tests, their pre and post, and also bring us basically 9 samples of writing, student writing, low, middle, high, using Utah Compose, and the teachers are going to be working to actually look and do that final, what can we do to fix anything that we would like to fix before we give the final test. Yes? Prompts. Right. But they're, right, two informative, yeah, that's what they ask about informative. Yeah, there's two informative, two opinion or argument in every grade. So, but if they're giving the same one, there's only two prompts. Okay. All right. Who's doing the Utrex outage?
Thank you. Great, thanks. Good morning. Just some Utrex information. Their IT, one of their top priority is not shutting Utrex off in December, but they are overburdened. And so just prepare as if it's going to go down, and hopefully it won't. And if it does, we'll just do whatever we can to work around. I got some ideas. We'll see if we have to use them. So if there's a scheduled time, if we know when it's going to go down, basically, right? I'm hoping that I get that answer in my IT meeting on Monday. The guy that's supposed to be in charge of this task was out this week at a conference, and so I wasn't able to talk to him this week. I'm really going to push for Monday. I'm really going to try and get an answer then, but it's been pushed off quite a bit as far as giving me an answer. But I promise you, every week I'm hitting them on this, trying to get them to give me an answer. They keep reassuring me that it's one of the top priorities. That's a good question. It all just depends on how quickly they're able to audit the information. In the past, I heard it's about December seems to be the longest. So between 2 to 4 weeks. Yeah. So we're really trying, I promise. That one's not mine. Oh. Oh, okay. Thank you. The pre-ID files that are being sent to WIDA and ACT, I'm gearing up to get those out. I'll pull that data around November 27th. Once I send that file, LEAs can go in and edit the information, but you cannot remove students from that. And then the ACT pre-ID file will be pulled around November 4th. And then once that's done, you guys can go in and edit your information as well. That one. And then Apple, the testing window is going to close December 1st. If your teachers haven't received their emails, contact the LTI help desk. However, I did get an email the other day from Salt Lake District. Their firewall was preventing teachers from getting their emails. So if your district hasn't seen your LTI emails, check that route. That might be what's causing it. And once they fix that issue, all of their emails came through. And then if you're missing students, go through your Utrex, verify that you're using the right core codes. That's still a problem that I'm seeing, that the DI core codes are not being used. We're sending the students to the teacher who's listed in Utrex as teacher 1. So that's where the students are going to be found on the LTI side there. And then if you've done everything you can and things just still are not working, contact me as soon as possible so that we can get it. I get that information pulled and send it to LTI, but it could take 24 hours to update. So the week of December 1st, if you're contacting me Wednesday, we might not make it. So, but email me, call me, do whatever you can, and I'll do everything I can to make sure that you're there. That's all I have. I've never heard of that. Okay, we're good. Who's this one?
Jared, this was, oh.
This is for Ann Michelle. She just wanted to let you know that there is an access testing coordinator administration training on December 7th. In the morning, it's for test administrators, and in the afternoon, it's for test coordinators. The information is not repeated. I think if I remember right, and Ann Michelle, if you're on, correct me, because I think she told me that information is not repeated. So you need to come to one session. You know, they are very specific, and she sent the registration link. You click on the link to come, and it will be 8 to 12 for test administrators, and 12:30 to 4:30 for test coordinators, and that's for the access training. And I can't remember, Jared, is it mandatory they have to come to access for WIDA for training? Okay, you can do the training online, but this is also useful for if they would prefer to do an in-person. It's a little friendlier probably, or easier, and that way you have you can access your questions quickly. Okay, and now for the keep.
Okay, this piece is, thank you. This piece is very quick. We have had several teachers ask about sight words, and if sight words will be on the exit assessment, so we just wanted to give an answer to everyone. The answer is no. Depending on the LEA and the curriculum you're using or the basal, those sight words vary from district to district and school to school. So for that reason, there will not be sight words per se, but there will be some other form of a reading piece that they will need to complete. And then as far as what's happening, we just wanted to update on where the entrance currently is and where the exit currently is. The cut scores are still in the works. We had to look at those in a few different ways, and we've had a great deal of support from our technical advisory committee, and it's getting closer. And then being able to examine those entrance scores in a way that will align them with the exit scores so that we can have a valid and reliable way of looking at growth is something we're taking very seriously. And so we're still in the process of completing that now. As far as the exit, the goal is to have a draft at or before January 1st, fingers crossed, and know that what we provide at that time will be in the process of being further edited. Past that point, we're going to consider it a living document, and the scoring will not be included as we are still working with our technical advisory committee on how to score these items so that it's fair and reliable across the assessment, and we're giving the right weight for each item and area. And that's all I got. So if you need any support with ELA Stage 3 through 5th grades, DIBELS, or KEEP, let me know. And next, let's get ACT.
Hey, it's my turn. We're going to talk about the ACT. So on our list of things to go over today, some fun stuff. Dates and deadlines, extended break information. We're going to talk about accommodations. These are accommodations for students with disabilities, as well as accommodations for students who are English language learners. Protecting student privacy. There's some information that you guys need to know about that, and as it particularly relates to the ACT survey. And some fact sheets that have been created, some tools for you guys to get quick information, and then information about upcoming trainings. And I love this comic, especially as you guys are sitting here in meetings. So we're going to keep this as concise as we can. but also have a little bit of fun while you get important information. And while we're doing this, because I know this is sometimes a long meeting, this is part of the fun. And actually, I'm probably going to have to do this from my computer now that I think about it, unless you can click on, we'll let you click on it. So we're going to play a little game and play just a smidgen of the song. Your job is to come up with a name, that tune, the artist, and the thematic connection to the slide that we just did. If it'll work. Will it work? Unless it won't work. Is that because it's on that computer? Darn! We're going to have fun. Okay, so I will give it away. So this song was a little blurb from Bobby McFerrin. Can anybody name the song that it would probably have been? Don't worry, be happy. Yeah, so as we're going through this, don't worry, be happy. Okay. Way to go, Tony. Maybe. So let's talk about ACT dates, things that are coming up. These are what you should already have done. So this is your mental checklist of, am I there? Am I kind of on task? Am I where I think I should be? So by now you should have logged into Pearson Access Next and started to manage your participation. So this means selecting your delivery dates, when do you want your materials delivered, and also deciding, are you going to do paper or online? So this doesn't have to be completed until December 1st, but you need to be in there to be able to get those things managed by December 1st. So question was who does the managing? Is this ADs or is this schools? So depending on how you guys sent in your org files to ACT, ACT would be sending out emails to the person who is in charge of doing that. So some schools have their school testing coordinators doing that. The district testing coordinator ultimately is in charge of making sure that everybody who needs to have access has access. And the district testing coordinator can add school testing coordinators, delete school testing coordinators, but the school testing coordinators cannot do that. So the hierarchy of who can add, edit, and change is the state can add district people, and the district can add school people. School people can change school information, like when they want their delivery date, but district people are in charge of the district information. Does that answer your question? Yes, your school people should be doing this. Right. Unless you are, some people in here are the school testing coordinators also, versus ACT. Yes. So if this is you, make sure that this is done. If this is not you, make sure that your people are doing this. Sorry. I'll hold it out here. Okay. Next thing has to do with accommodations. This is making sure that accommodations are applied for. So there's an accommodations window, and during that window is the time frame that you have to apply, or your people have to apply for student accommodations for ACT testing. So because your students have accommodations that have been written into an IEP or a 504, does not automatically translate into ACT accommodations. ACT is a standardized test, and because of that, the process for having those accommodations approved for use on ACT is a little bit different. and it requires an application process. We're going to talk about that a little bit more because there is some, we think, really helpful and exciting information that has come out because of some of the work that has been done with ACT regarding student accommodations. So notice that the deadline on this is January 12th. So this needs to be done prior to January 12th. So those are the things that should already have been in place. Things coming up next. This is a slightly longer list. So online testing. If you are choosing to do online testing, you need to make sure that all of your technical materials, your computers, all of those, your systems have been checked, tested, and are ready to go by January 12th. When you go onto Utah's ACT website, you go on to number 2 on Utah's ACT website, which is the configuration pull-down menu. You'll find the technical specifications, and there's also an additional document that can help walk you through what do we need, what are the requirements, what does it look like to become prepared for what we need to do for online testing. And you'll have to do a certification process for ACT to say, yep, you have what you need in order to be able to complete online testing. So the question was, what do we do if we need to rent our computers in order to complete the ACT pre-check? So what I'm going to have you do, since your situation is unique, is to call the ACT help number and ask them how they would like you to handle that. So if you have additional questions, when you go onto the Utah ACT webpage, there's a little gray box. And in that gray box, there is a phone number. It's a 1-800 number. And it's, I think the title of the box is something like more information about the ACT or whatever. But if you call that general number, then they will either be able to answer your question or they will send you to whatever branch within their technical support can help you with that. So question was, can you, and make sure I'm answering the right question. Question was, can you opt for online testing down to the student level or? As opposed to on the national contract? So the question was, is online testing available on the national testing as opposed to just through the state contract? And I don't know the answer to that question. That would be a great question to call that 1-800 number and ask them. As far as I know, I don't believe so, but I'm not positive. Okay. Next thing is to review your testing coordinator manuals. Make sure you're familiar with what needs to be in there or what needs to be done. The manuals will be released by ACT. They're estimating December. So be looking for that. They'll post them on that Utah ACT website. And then we'll also let you know in the AD memos when those are released. This is a great time to decide when you're going to do your proctor trainings. Start to get those things ready, start to get them planned so that it's not a time crunch, especially because January and February can get to be a crazy time of year with getting everything ready. So get those things planned out. And then in January or by January, you'll need to verify your student information. So the student data upload that Emily Berry talked about, that file for ACT, when we get that all compiled, we will send that to ACT. We're shooting for about the middle of December. When that goes to ACT, then they will put that and push it out to PA Next. Once it's in PA Next, then you will have the ability to go through and look at all of that information and make sure that it is correct. If it is incorrect, then your school level testing coordinators can make student changes in their school, or the district testing coordinator can do that as well. Okay, looking at dates, one other question that's come up is, so when is the test for 2018-19? This is the paper test date. It's on the 20th of February. This is a Wednesday. I checked with ACT and said, hey, this is a Wednesday. Are we sure this is a Wednesday? This is a Wednesday. And they said, yes, it is a Wednesday because of the President's Day holiday. So you've got your test dates. So your paper test dates, your online testing dates, and then the accommodations windows. And we'll keep that information available for you. But I wanted to give you that information so that you could plan as you're setting up your calendars for the next school year. Any questions on this before we move on? Are you guys ready to move on? Give me a nod if you're ready. Give me a head shake if you're not ready. Okay, we're ready. Extended break. So we've talked a little bit about how there's the possibility of an extended break. Wanted to point out that this is an option. This is not a required extended break. It will add testing time onto the length of your testing day if you choose to use it. They have not given us specific guidelines on exactly what that will look like yet, because that will come out in the testing manuals that they haven't released yet. However, ACT has given us some information, and the information they have given us is that if you choose to do the extended break, one thing is that your students still need to be secure. It's still part of the test. They cannot have access to electronics. They cannot be going around talking to other students. They will, however, be able to use the restroom, eat, but the manner in which they eat is not going to be the same as, okay, everybody go out, go get some food, go over to McDonald's, whatever, and then come back. It'll still need to be in a secure setting, but we don't have more details on what that looks like. So as an LEA, or as a school, you can decide whether or not that's something you actually want to incorporate or not. Also, we found out that it needs to be done on an entire school basis. So your school as a whole either needs to decide, yes, we're doing the extended break, or no, we're not. You can't have 2 or 3 classrooms doing an extended break and the rest of your test setting not doing it. Yeah, so the question was, when does the break occur? And the break does occur right after the standard administration of the 4 regular components of the ACT. So you would go through your English, your reading, your writing, or excuse me, English, reading, math, and science, and then you have your break, and then it would be writing. So question. So the question is, how does the break occur with, are the answer booklets and everything, are they gathered up if you're doing paper? And then you do the break, and then everything is given back out after the break. And that's the information we don't have yet within that testing manual. What they've explained to us so far on why does it matter is they don't want students talking about their answers. They don't want anybody to, they're still in the secure testing time if they're in their extended break.
When they do their regular ACT, if they do the writing portion, all of the other parts is done, then the kids go back into the writing.
So all I can tell you is what they've told me so far. But once we see their testing manual, we'll know what that procedure needs to look like. And since the extended break is only offered to state testing It's not offered in national testing. We don't have information on what that looks like yet. So the manual, the previous, did they post it as of today? Happy day. So it might be on there. Does it have the testing? So comment was that the testing administration manual is on the website as of yesterday. So that could be really good news because that might answer all of our questions. So the question was, can they still take a break similar to the other breaks if they choose not to take the extended break? And in the testing manual, the information is it's 15 minutes. So adding the 15 minutes on with the 40 minutes of writing, then it will add an additional hour onto your typical ACT administration time. But that makes me really happy that it's not December that testing manual was released. So you should be able to get on there, onto the ACT website, and if you go down to, there's little pull-down menu bars, and the item that was until yesterday, gray, now should be blue, and we'll have a link for you to be able to download the testing administration manual. And then if there are other questions from that, then we can go from there. Yes, so I can update that information. I created these slides on, I think, Saturday night about 1 o'clock in the morning. And so that was previous to this being uploaded. So the question is, can students opt out of writing? And the answer is no. So within the state, all students will be taking the writing portion. They could opt out of the entire test, like we talked about with parent opt-out. Question is, what happens if students walk away? So they take an extended break, they just don't return. And we asked the ACT about this question because it had come up. If the student walks away during that test, the student will not receive an ELA score. If they've completed the other components of the test, then they should be able to get their English composite score as long as there were no testing irregularities or other things. The only concern that could arise is whether there were any other testing security issues because the test is not technically over. So that was the only thing that they brought up. Okay. Yes? Yeah, so this is Wednesday through Friday. Okay, so you may want to look at the second test date options that are available, or online testing, because online testing will give you a window. Okay, this song on here.
That sound all right?
Yeah, just because it's fun. If you're going to be in a meeting, right? If you guys have additional questions while I pull up this presentation on my computer that has the awesome songs on it. By the way, there's a theme. The theme has to do with 80s music, just so you know. Not saying that I know anything about 80s music or that I was alive and cognizant of 80s music. The 80s were a great decade that I've read about. Hairspray and blow dryers do wonders. Okay. So here is your song clip for this one, if you're ready. But I have to unmute my
Pointers.
No. Okay. I heard it. What? Depeche Mode, what song? No? Think about, we just talked about an extended break, and we talked about testing protocols. Online, what's the name of the song? That's one of the lines. Keep going. Keep going. Come on, 80s people. No, it's not Policy of Truth. Come on, online. Enjoy the silence. That was the song. Way to go, Brooke. You just scored major 80s points. Okay, the theme was that it had to do with the break. Sorry, it's a bad habit. Okay, we're going to talk about accommodations. Tracy is here. Sure, absolutely. Here, I'm going to have you, so I don't rephrase.
All right, thanks. Is ACT telling us that they'll be able to derive a growth score based on the writing from the ACT with the writing from SAGE?
So the answer to that question is yes, because growth scores are not calculated as change from one score from change to another score. Growth scores are calculated differently with a different formula. And if you want the detailed statistical information, let me know and I can send you that information. But it's a hairy, complex statistical tack kind of thing. But I can send it to you if you want it. Just send me an email. Okay.
Stay here with me. We're tag teaming this. All right, so want to advance? Okay, this is like the best moment ever in the world of ACT and like one step forward for like all special ed students. After many, 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 many phone calls, many, many, many conversations, we finally got ACT to put out a document that lists their accommodations, accessibility features, so that we have a place to kind of align with what's in our accommodations policy that we use for our other assessments, so that it's no longer just guessing for IEP teams on what to do with accommodations. So we sent this out, and I believe an AD memo. How many of you actually saw this document? Okay. We have sent it to SPED directors as well, but we're asking you guys to please go back and share it with your SPED people. So I don't know how many of you are aware, we share information differently with our special ed directors than we do with you guys. You get a lot more stuff, you get more updated stuff. We only send once a month a memo to SPED directors, and we meet only, I think, 3-4 times a year. So you get a lot more information, so please keep passing stuff down to your special ed people. So anyway, so we got this document that was released that talked about if you're doing online testing, gives you what ACT has as embedded supports, and what they have as like accommodations for their paper testing as well. So if you notice in this document though, some of these accommodations or embedded supports have little numbers by them. Have you noticed that? If you go to the very back of this document, it gives you some footnotes. So some of these are things that they know that they need to do moving forward in the future. They don't have them quite incorporated yet. So kind of take note of that. And when you are sharing this with teams, and we're trying to get the information out to our special ed people as quick as we can as well, that some of them may not be available now. Some of the many conversations that I've had with ACT was that they're behind the times and what's gone on with testing and computer-based testing and how we have this UDL component. and accessibility supports. So I think they've started hopefully listening, and this is a huge gain for us. How we are going to take this document and incorporate it into the accommodations policy is I just added to the bottom of that the tables, that list kind of all of our embedded supports and then accommodations. We've added it to the bottom as just as an appendix. So see this document as an appendix to the accommodations policy. So hopefully I can get that reposted to our website in the next month, 2 weeks, week. It takes forever to get onto our website, but we will incorporate this into that accommodations policy. So, yes. I'm going to turn that question to Rebecca.
So this is new as of, oops, I just hit the button. This is new as of about 2 weeks ago that they released this document and that it has been formatted. The accommodations training that ACT will be providing is not until December. So just for applying for accommodations, January 12th. Yes. So what I would recommend is that this information go out to anybody that you can get it to. The ACT training that they come to provide, or that they're doing online, excuse me, because that one's an online Q&A, is going to be a national conversation about using the TAA website. And so it's not going to be specific to this document. So I don't know how much of this information will be included in that presentation. I would hope that it will be in there, but because this is new information and it has taken some discussion to help it come to fruition, I don't know how much of the organization it has actually gone through yet. So I would recommend getting it. Correct. Yes. So.
Well, I'm sure it isn't just us, squawking. So I'm sure all the other states. Oh, about. I don't.
So the question, I keep forgetting. Sorry, online people. We do know you're there. The question was, will this information be included in the training that ACT will be doing about accommodations on December 1st? And our hope is that it will be included. But because the information is so new, and also the process that ACT goes through, just so you know, when they do their trainings, they create their information, then they submit it. So they, as in our Utah representatives, submit their presentations to their ACT review people, who then review their presentations before they can do anything with it. And I'm not sure how it will end up being translated, new information. Hopefully it will all be included.
I need the online people to stay muted because every time you unmute, we hear a beep. Please stay muted.
All right, so I don't know when ACT will get this document up on their website, but we are trying to get it posted. Hopefully in the next couple days it'll show up on our website under the ACT assessment tab. So one of the other discussions that we've had in length is how are they going through their process for accepting accommodations, denying accommodations, how it looks on IEPs. So we've been really hashing through that as well. So we've come to a few consensus points. We actually sent a document to ACT that said, here's how our IEP teams make their decisions. Here's how things look, and here's how we think you should look at it. That went over fairly okay with ACT. So in the meantime, what we wanted to share with you guys, one of the big components for them with accommodations is alignment. So they look at the IEP and they look at alignment for the accommodation being requested, and is it in the IEP for instructional uses. So that's one of the biggest components. So if you can just, as you are thinking about this, passing along to special ed people, working with your teams back at your districts, they'll look at the IEP service page, and they're also going to look at that assessment addendum, which specifically outlines how a student participates in SAGE, and there is a section for ACT that says a student will participate with standard administration, participating with accommodations, they participate in an alternate assessment. That's going to be a big piece to what we've told ACT to look for in that. And knowing that even if it is marked for SAGE, right, a student may participate with standard administration because the accessibility features are no longer accommodations, right? It's not an accommodation if all students can use it, but it may be an accommodation for ACT. So we've kind of tried to walk them through decision points on how our IEP teams are guided in marking that stuff. So that's kind of what this document helps outline. The other request I have for you is if you do have, if ACT does come back and deny your accommodations, please contact Rebecca or I or both so that we can kind of help process through this, because we are trying to gather that information too. You know, how can we better help our IEP teams in the field make good decisions in writing those IEPs so that we can just keep this moving well for teams. So please let us know. If, however, an accommodation is denied, we don't get it accepted, right? You have it marked on an IEP team. And now that we're using this for statewide testing, here's the caveat. And this will also be expressed to our special ed directors. We're meeting in December. If it's denied and it's on an IEP and the student is given the assessment without it, it's a denial of FAPE. Okay? I know. So what the IEP team needs to do, and I know this isn't your guys' area, but some is. I'm looking at Robin up here. I know you guys are in touch with your special ed people, hopefully. The IEP team needs to reconvene and figure out what are we doing, right? What do we need to do in that IEP, and maybe make amendments, or the decision point is, does my student continue to test with the accommodation, right, knowing that it may not be a college reportable score, but we're at least providing FAPE for the accountability component, or are we going to make an amendment to the IEP and just say, you know, we're going to forego this so that it is a college reportable score? So IEP teams need to be making that decision. So that is our advice there with that. Okay, and the more you can loop us in, just the better off we are moving forward as well. So, was that? And this was just out of the accommodations policy, as we've always talked about. Even though sometimes accommodations may be appropriate for instruction, they may not always necessarily be appropriate for standardized assessment. So keep that in mind. But that is the one thing that ACT stood very solid on in all of our conversations, and all the vagueness and detailedness that's come out is they will look for alignment in what does the student have listed for instruction all the way through classroom, school-wide assessment to statewide assessment. So that's the big component. So make sure those are aligned. Okay. And I think that is it. Any questions? Are you guys at least somewhat excited about this? It's something. It's a start, right? Okay. All right. I'm going to hand this over to Rebecca.
Thanks. So just so you know the significance of that, so this has been a very difficult and protracted discussion with a type of testing that hasn't typically been as geared toward including all students. And so this is kind of a watershed moment. And so it was really exciting to be able to get these supports and these documents from an equity standpoint. This is a big step. And I think it represents a lot of work, especially on Tracy's part. As a matter of fact, can we just give Tracy a round of applause? She has worked her tail off for this. So thank you, Tracy. We're going to move to talking about supports for English learners. So this is another watershed moment. So we've talked about students with disabilities, but ACT has also included a way to get supports for students who are English language learners. They have some supports that will still provide college reportable scores and some supports for students that would provide non-college reportable scores but still meet the state accountability requirements, just like they do for students with disabilities. Some of these have to do for the college reportable scores. There are things like direct language translation dictionaries, extended time, separate testing environments, things like that. For non-college reportable scores, they have full translated tests, things like that. So those are things that you can find on the online site. We're going to take our little sound. Okay. Actually, we're not. Sorry. Because it's 11 o'clock. But this one had a really cool song from Midnight Oil. Those of you. Yes, Beds Are Burning, which is a song about equity from Australia. Tony, you are so on top of it. Way to go. Okay, 2 links from the ACT website about supports for English language learners. So you can go on here to find this information. Also, we'll be linking this on our website as well on the assessment page. Really quickly, FERPA, we're going to be talking about this more. In a short version, there is a survey that is in the student information booklet, which is the first part that students fill out on the ACT, has 2 questions in it that are problematic. One asks about religious affiliation. The other one asks about parent income. In order for students to be able to answer those questions, it requires parent permission. So we are creating a form that will help LEAs to be able to gain the permission that you need from parents to be able to answer those questions. Right now it's going through our legal department. Once that is done, we'll give you more information. We'll send that out to you. That's the really short abbreviated version. Question? Question is, will we have access to the survey? Because we have to give parents access to the survey. The answer is yes, you will have access to the survey, questions for parents, and you will have access to the survey, or the permission form. The question is, without parents signing, the students would be denied the chance to take the ACT. And the answer for that one is no. They'll still be able to take the ACT. They just can't answer that part of the pre-information questions. And we're still untangling all of the legal stuff so this was brought to our attention about a week and a half ago. Yes. Yes. Right. So the survey is at the beginning, that beginning survey booklet. So right now we're trying to create a form. The question was, how will students know if their parents have given permission or not? Our plan initially is to create a form that students can take home. In our really simple mind, it would be that students come back as they come in the door, they hand that form to whoever the testing proctor is. Until we come up with a better way to do that. We don't know if that could be collected electronically. We don't know yet what that will look like. It's gone to our Attorney General right now and some other people who are investigating exactly what the details will be. So as soon as we have more information on that, we'll be sure and give that to you. The problem isn't So the question is, what if they all just don't answer the questions? And that's a good question. The problem isn't necessarily that they answer the questions. The problem is that if without permission from parents, they actually can't have the survey. So that's where the sticky point is in the law right now. So question, I'm not even, yes, no. Okay. So the question is this information that the state wants, or is it just on the survey? So within the survey information, it talks about that the religious affiliation information is collected because there are colleges and universities that sometimes use that information for scholarships or for admissions or other organizations or things that might be looking for that demographic when they're doing college entrance things. The financial information has to do with financial aid information. So, okay. The income is a FAFSA thing. The religious affiliation isn't. So the question is, why is ACT gathering that? And it has largely to do with because they are the clearinghouse for the information that the colleges are getting reports for on students when they're also getting ACTs. So, okay, so that's the short version of this. There was a song that had to do with this. It was by Kenny Loggins. It was in a movie. Had to do with jets flying really fast. Danger zone. Thank you. Okay. So we'll give you information. There are fact sheets available. That was Celebrate by Kool and the Gang. There are some trainings, ACT training today. It's an in-person training, which is a good time to come and ask questions. It'll be at the Salt Lake District office. Starts at 12:30. Then some USBE trainings. These are ones that I'll be facilitating along with Megan Lopez and Whitney Barlow when we're talking about how to use core standards, core instruction to prepare students for the ACT. And then one for especially geared for new testing administrators and testing coordinators on preparing for smooth sailing on test day. So that information was sent out in the AD memo. You'll also be able to find it on the website as soon as our page gets updated. Okay, the last little sound clip, thank you, was from Simple Minds. Close. Actually, no, you're right, because I changed it. It was Don't You Forget About Me. So, yes. Originally, it was a Bon Jovi song, but then I changed it. So, okay, any final questions in the last over time, 5 seconds? Okay, thank you guys for your time, for your attention. I realize that was a lot of information. If you have questions, though, please email me. You can always call me. I'm not as often at my desk, so email is usually the best way to get a hold of me. Okay.